It was an ordinary Wednesday when Sophia Martinez first noticed him. The same corner of Fifth and Pine, the same weathered cardboard sign, the same kind eyes that seemed out of place among the city's hurried indifference. For 2 years, she had walked past this spot on her way to the prestigious law firm where she worked, barely registering the man who sat there day after day, but on this particular morning, something changed. Perhaps it was the way the autumn light caught his profile, revealing a dignity beneath the worn clothing. Or maybe it was the simple act of kindness she witnessed him giving his only sandwich to a stray dog that approached with hopeful eyes. "Here you go, buddy," he said in a voice that carried an unexpected warmth and refinement. "Looks like we're both having a rough day." Sophia stopped in her tracks, the takeaway coffee in her hand suddenly feeling like an extravagance. Without overthinking, she approached him. "Would you like a coffee?" she offered, extending the untouched cup. He looked up, surprise flickering across his face before a genuine smile transformed his features. "That's very kind. I'm Daniel, by the way." "Sophia," she replied, noticing for the first time that his eyes were a striking shade of blue, clear and intelligent. That simple exchange became a morning ritual. Coffee and conversation for 5 minutes before Sophia continued to her world of legal briefs and corporate meetings. 5 minutes that gradually became the highlight of her day. What she couldn't have known was how those 5 minutes would change everything. The wealthy Martinez family, appearances were everything. Sophia's parents had climbed their way from middle-class backgrounds to the upper echelons of society through strategic investments and social connections. Their daughter, Harvard-educated and on track to becoming a partner at one of the city's most prestigious law firms, was their crowning achievement and social currency. The Martinezes hosted elaborate dinner parties in their mansion overlooking the city, paraded Sophia before eligible bachelors from good families, and made it clear that her purpose was to solidify their place in high society through an advantageous marriage. "Blake Whitmore asked about you again," her mother mentioned during their weekly Sunday brunch, referencing the son of a real estate tycoon. "His family is hosting the charity gala next month. I've already RSVP'd for us." Sophia merely nodded, having long ago learned that resistance only led to lengthy lectures about family duty and opportunity. But as she sipped her mimosa in her parents' immaculate dining room, her thoughts drifted to Daniel and their conversations about books, dreams, and the simple joys of life. What she didn't realize was that those conversations were laying the foundation for a choice that would soon tear her world apart. Daniel wasn't what people expected when they heard the word homeless. His speech was articulate, his knowledge vast, and his perspectives thoughtful. During their morning talks, Sophia learned he had a degree in engineering and a passion for sustainable architecture. "What happened?" she finally asked one day, curiosity overcoming propriety. "How did you end up on the street?" Daniel finished without bitterness. "Life happens. Sometimes all at once." He shared his story in pieces over the following weeks. A promising career cut short by a company collapse. A battle with pneumonia that drained his savings. A system designed to help that somehow made it harder to climb back up. But never once did he speak with resentment or self-pity. "The hardest part isn't the physical discomfort," he confessed. "It's becoming invisible. People look through you, not at you." Sophia found herself looking forward to their conversations more than the high-powered meetings that filled her days. Daniel listened, truly listened, unlike the men her parents paraded before her who seemed more interested in her family connections than her thoughts. "You're different today," Daniel observed one morning as she approached with their coffees. Sophia sighed. "Office politics. The senior partners passed me over for the Westbrook case." "Because you're too good," Daniel suggested. She laughed. "How do you figure that?" "You said yourself the case involves environmental loopholes. Maybe they know you'd fight too hard for what's right instead of what's profitable." The insight stopped her short. It was exactly what had happened, though she hadn't admitted it even to herself. As autumn deepened into winter, their relationship evolved. Sophia brought warm meals and winter clothes, which Daniel accepted with dignity but only after she promised to join him in sharing the food. They sat on a bench in the nearby park, ignoring the curious glances of passers-by at the unlikely pair she in designer workwear, he in his clean but worn clothing. "Tell me about your family," he asked one evening as they watched the sunset paint the city skyline. Sophia hesitated before the truth spilled out: the pressure, the expectations, the feeling of being a prized show dog rather than a daughter. "They love me," she concluded. "They just love the idea of who I should be more." Daniel nodded. "Sometimes the hardest cage to recognize is the one made of privilege." The words stayed with her long after they parted. Meanwhile, at the Martinez estate, plans were being set in motion. Sophia's mother had noticed her distraction and increased her efforts to secure a match with Blake Whitmore. "He'll be at the Hendersons' gala," she informed Sophia. "Wear the blue Versace, it brings out your eyes." Sophia attended these events with diminishing enthusiasm. The conversations felt shallow, the connections forced. When Blake inevitably cornered her on a balcony, his cologne overwhelming and his hand possessively at her waist, she found herself comparing his rehearsed compliments to Daniel's genuine insights. "You seem miles away," Blake commented, irritation edging his voice. "Just thinking about a case," she lied, excusing herself. That night, she stared at her reflection in her penthouse apartment's bathroom mirror. The designer dress, the perfect makeup, the carefully styled hair, all part of a performance that suddenly felt exhausting. The next morning, she made a decision that would change the course of her carefully planned life. Instead of her usual quick coffee exchange, she asked Daniel a question. "If you could have dinner anywhere in the city, where would you go?" His eyes widened slightly before a smile crept across his face. "There's a little Ethiopian place on 9th that I used to love." "Best Doro, what in the city?" That evening, after arranging for him to use the shower and clean clothes at a local shelter, Sophia met Daniel outside the restaurant, her heart racing with an unexpected nervousness that he was waiting for her, transformed not just by the clean jeans and button-down shirt she had provided, but by a quiet confidence that had always been there beneath the surface. His hair, clean and combed, revealed strands of premature silver at the temples that somehow added to his appeal. "You look beautiful," he said simply, his eyes taking in her deliberate choice of a casual sweater and jeans instead of her usual corporate armor. "So do you," she replied, meaning it. The dinner stretched for hours as they shared plates of spicy stew and injera bread, their conversation flowing effortlessly from philosophy to childhood memories to dreams deferred but not abandoned. "Why are you doing this?" Daniel asked finally, the question hanging between them. Sophia considered her answer carefully. "Because when I'm with you, I feel like myself. Not the version my parents created or my firm expects. Just me." The honesty of her words surprised them both. When he walked her to her car, the moment for a good-night kiss presented itself naturally. His touch was gentle, questioning rather than demanding. And in that moment, Sophia knew she had crossed a line from which there would be no easy return. What she couldn't have anticipated was how quickly that line would come to divide her entire life. The Martinez family prided themselves on their network of informants, friends, acquaintances, and employees who kept them apprised of potential social embarrassments. So it was perhaps inevitable that news of Sophia's dinner with a street person reached her mother before Sophia had even decided how to explain her evolving feelings. The summons came via text. Sunday brunch was now mandatory, not optional. Sophia arrived at her parents' mansion to find not just her mother and father, but her two older brothers as well, their expressions unified in disapproval. "Is this some kind of quarter-life crisis?" her father demanded without preamble, tossing a manila envelope onto the imported marble table. Inside were photos Sophia and Daniel at the restaurant, walking together, their goodbye kiss captured from a distance but unmistakable. "Are you investigating me now?" Sophia asked, her voice steady despite the shock. "We're protecting you," her mother insisted. "Do you have any idea what associating with this person could do to your reputation? To our family name?" "His name is Daniel," Sophia said quietly. "And he's a good man who's fallen on hard times." Her oldest brother, Marcus, stepped forward, ever the family enforcer. "This isn't a Hallmark movie, sophomore. You have responsibilities. A position to maintain." A position? Sophia repeated, something hardening inside her. Or a prison? The argument escalated quickly. Her parents alternated between threats and pleas. Her career, her inheritance, her place in society, all were leveraged as weapons to bring her back in line. This ends now, her father declared. I've arranged for Blake to take you to the opera Friday night. You'll accept his invitation, and will forget this lapse in judgment. For the first time in her life, Sophia looked at her family and saw not the loving support system she had always believed in, but a gilded cage of expectations and conditional love. No, she said simply. The silence that followed was deafening. What did you say? Her father asked, his voice dangerously quiet. I said no. I won't date Blake. I won't pretend to be someone I'm not anymore. Her mother's face paled. Is this about that homeless man? Have you lost your mind? This is about me, Sophia countered. About living honestly for once. The conversation devolved from there. Ultimatums were issued. Lines were drawn. And when Sophia walked out of the mansion that day, she understood that she had chosen a path her family might never accept. The weeks that followed were a storm of consequences. Her father, with his considerable influence, ensured that the law firm reconsidered her path to partnership. Old friends from her social circle suddenly became unavailable. Even her apartment co-signed by her parents as a graduation gift was suddenly under review by the building management. Through it all, Daniel became her anchor. Not by promising solutions or material support, but through his unwavering belief in her resilience. You don't need to do this, he told her one evening as they sat in her increasingly empty apartment, her possessions being sold off one by one to maintain independence. Your life was perfectly fine before me. Perfectly empty, she corrected him. I've never felt more alive than these past months, even with everything falling apart. Their relationship deepened against the backdrop of her family's rejection. Daniel found work as a day laborer, taking whatever jobs his engineering degree couldn't immediately secure without references or a fixed address. Sophia, barred from the elite law firms, began offering legal aid at a community center. They moved into a small studio apartment in a part of town the Martinezes would never visit. Their furniture came from thrift stores, their meals were simple but shared with genuine laughter, and their dreams once confined to the expectations of others began to take new, authentic shape. But the final blow came at Christmas, when Sophia reached out to her family one last time. You've made your choice, her father said coldly over the phone. Until you come to your senses, you are no longer a Martinez. The words should have devastated her. Instead, as she looked across their tiny apartment at Daniel hanging paper snowflakes he had made with children at the shelter where he now volunteered, she felt an unexpected sense of freedom. I love you, she told Daniel that night. And I don't regret a thing. What neither of them knew was that the new year would bring revelations that would shake the foundations of everything they thought they knew. The Martinez family prided themselves on their network of informants, friends, acquaintances, and employees who kept them apprised of potential social embarrassments. So it was perhaps inevitable that news of Sophia's dinner with a street person reached her mother before Sophia had even decided how to explain her evolving feelings. The summons came via text. Sunday brunch was now mandatory, not optional. Sophia arrived at her parents' mansion to find not just her mother and father, but her two older brothers as well, their expressions unified in disapproval. Is this some kind of quarter-life crisis? Her father demanded without preamble, tossing a manila envelope onto the imported marble table. Inside were photos Sophia and Daniel at the restaurant, walking together, their goodbye kiss captured from a distance but unmistakable. Are you investigating me now? Sophia asked, her voice steady despite the shock. We're protecting you, her mother insisted. Do you have any idea what associating with this person could do to your reputation? To our family name? His name is Daniel, Sophia said quietly. And he's a good man who's fallen on hard times. Her oldest brother, Marcus, stepped forward, ever the family enforcer. This isn't a Hallmark movie, sophomore. You have responsibilities. A position to maintain. A position? Sophia repeated, something hardening inside her. Or a prison? The argument escalated quickly. Her parents alternated between threats and pleas. Her career, her inheritance, her place in society, all were leveraged as weapons to bring her back in line. This ends now, her father declared. I've arranged for Blake to take you to the opera Friday night. You'll accept his invitation, and will forget this lapse in judgment. For the first time in her life, Sophia looked at her family and saw not the loving support system she had always believed in, but a gilded cage of expectations and conditional love. No, she said simply. The silence that followed was deafening. What did you say? Her father asked, his voice dangerously quiet. I said no. I won't date Blake. I won't pretend to be someone I'm not anymore. Her mother's face paled. Is this about that homeless man? Have you lost your mind? This is about me, Sophia countered. About living honestly for once. The conversation devolved from there. Ultimatums were issued. Lines were drawn. And when Sophia walked out of the mansion that day, she understood that she had chosen a path her family might never accept. The weeks that followed were a storm of consequences. Her father, with his considerable influence, ensured that the law firm reconsidered her path to partnership. Old friends from her social circle suddenly became unavailable. Even her apartment co-signed by her parents as a graduation gift was suddenly under review by the building management. Through it all, Daniel became her anchor. Not by promising solutions or material support, but through his unwavering belief in her resilience. You don't need to do this, he told her one evening as they sat in her increasingly empty apartment, her possessions being sold off one by one to maintain independence. Your life was perfectly fine before me. Perfectly empty, she corrected him. I've never felt more alive than these past months, even with everything falling apart. Their relationship deepened against the backdrop of her family's rejection. Daniel found work as a day laborer, taking whatever jobs his engineering degree couldn't immediately secure without references or a fixed address. Sophia, barred from the elite law firms, began offering legal aid at a community center. They moved into a small studio apartment in a part of town the Martinezes would never visit. Their furniture came from thrift stores, their meals were simple but shared with genuine laughter, and their dreams once confined to the expectations of others began to take new, authentic shape. But the final blow came at Christmas, when Sophia reached out to her family one last time. You've made your choice, her father said coldly over the phone. Until you come to your senses, you are no longer a Martinez. The words should have devastated her. Instead, as she looked across their tiny apartment at Daniel hanging paper snowflakes he had made with children at the shelter where he now volunteered, she felt an unexpected sense of freedom. I love you, she told Daniel that night. And I don't regret a thing. What neither of them knew was that the new year would bring revelations that would shake the foundations of everything they thought they knew. The invitation came on embossed cardstock delivered by courier, an anomaly in their modest mailbox otherwise filled with bills and flyers. Mr. Daniel Chen is requested to attend the reading of Mr. Howard Chen's last will and testament. Daniel stared at the card, his face unreadable. Howard Chen? Sophia asked gently. A relative? My uncle, Daniel said after a long pause. I haven't seen him in years. Not since he didn't finish the sentence, but Sophia understood. Not since he had lost everything. Will you go? She asked. The law office where the reading was to take place occupied the top floor of a downtown skyscraper a world away from their current life. Sophia accompanied Daniel, holding his hand as they rode the elevator upward, both feeling out of place in their best but modest clothing. The receptionist's eyes widened slightly at Daniel's name, but she led them to a conference room where several other people waited. Most were in expensive suits, their expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed disdain as they assessed the newcomers. A distinguished older man at the head of the table stood. Daniel. It's been too long. Mr. Blackwell, Daniel nodded. I didn't expect to be included. Howard was very specific, the man replied, his eyes lingering on Sophia with interest. The reading proceeded formally. Howard Chen, it seemed, had been an extraordinarily wealthy man with diverse holdings across technology, real estate, and venture capital. He methodically divided portions of his estate among various relatives, charitable foundations, and longtime employees. Then came the surprise. To my nephew, Daniel Chen, I leave the controlling interest in Chen Innovations and all associated holdings, properties, and accounts, Mr. Blackwell read, his voice steady despite the gasps around the table. Valued at approximately $2.7 billion. The room erupted in protests and confusion. Sophia turned to Daniel, expecting to see shock mirroring her own. Instead, she found resignation and something like sadness in his eyes. There must be some mistake, one of the relatives insisted. Daniel has been living as a homeless person for years. He's clearly not competent to. That's quite enough, Mr. Blackwell interrupted. Howard anticipated your objections. He left a letter explaining his decision. The letter revealed a story Sophia had never heard. Howard Chen had built his empire from nothing, but as success came, he watched family members become entitled and disconnected from the values that had built their fortune. Before his health began failing, he had devised a test offering each potential heir the same choice. Live 1 year without access to family money or connections, Mr. Blackwell read. Show me you understand the value of work, the importance of character over currency. One by one, the family members had failed returning to luxury after weeks or sometimes just days. Only Daniel had persevered, even when true hardship struck. My nephew lost his job through no fault of his own, the letter continued. When illness took his savings, he could have come to me. Instead, he maintained his independence and his integrity. Even in poverty, he demonstrated more wealth of character than those surrounded by riches. Sophia listened, pieces falling into place. The articulate speech. The engineering degree. The absence of bitterness that would have been natural for someone who had always known only poverty. You knew, she whispered to Daniel as the reading continued. All this time. Not about the inheritance, he clarified quietly. Just about the test. I thought I had failed when I ended up on the street. I never expected. He gestured at the papers being distributed. Later, in the privacy of Mr. Blackwell's office, Daniel explained the full story to Sophia. How his uncle had offered the challenge when Daniel graduated from MIT. How Daniel had embraced the opportunity to prove himself. How a series of genuine misfortunes had turned the temporary experiment into a real struggle for survival. Why didn't you tell me? Sophia asked, hurt mingling with confusion. At first, it didn't matter. You were just a kind person bringing coffee, Daniel said. Then, when it started to matter, I was afraid. Afraid you might see me differently, think I had been lying. And later he hesitated. Later, I needed to know you chose me for me, not for what I might become. Mr. Blackwell cleared his throat. If I may, Ms. Martinez. Your relationship with Daniel was noted in Howard's surveillance reports. Surveillance? Sophia echoed. Howard wanted to know who stood by Daniel during his most difficult times, Mr. Blackwell explained. There's a provision for you as well. The provision, it turned out, was a separate trust in Sophia's name, not contingent on her relationship with Daniel, but established in recognition of her character. Her choice to stand by Daniel despite losing her family, career, and social standing had impressed Howard Chen as much as Daniel's resilience. As they left the building, neither spoke for several blocks. The weight of revelation settled between them, not just the sudden wealth, but the understanding that their relationship had been built on partial truths. I'm sorry, Daniel finally said as they sat on a park bench, the same one where they had shared many meals in harder times. I should have told you everything. Sophia took his hand, conflicted but understanding. Would you have ever told me? If this hadn't happened? Yes, he said without hesitation. I had already decided to. That's why I agreed to go to the reading. I thought it would just be closure, a formal ending to that chapter. I never imagined that you'd actually inherit billions. Sophia finished with a shaky laugh. That any of this would happen, Daniel corrected. Meeting you. Falling in love. Finding a purpose beyond just proving myself. The sincerity in his voice reminded Sophia why she had fallen in love with him, his authenticity, not his circumstances. What do we do now? She asked. Daniel looked out at the city, the same skyline they had admired when they had nothing. Whatever we want. But first, I think we have some people to prove wrong. The news of Daniel Chen's inheritance spread through the city's elite circles like wildfire. Overnight, the homeless man became the subject of business profiles and society gossip. The narrative transformed from cautionary tale to Cinderella story, with Sophia recast as the prescient princess who had seen the prince beneath the rags. They moved from their tiny studio to a modest but comfortable apartment, a deliberate choice to transition gradually while they decided how to use their newfound resources responsibly. We could buy an island, Daniel joked as they unpacked their few belongings. Or we could do something that matters, Sophia countered, her mind already working through possibilities. The first order of business was addressing the wounds of the past year. Daniel reached out to former colleagues and professors, establishing a foundation to support engineers facing career disruptions and health crises, the very circumstances that had derailed his own path. Sophia, free from financial constraints, pursued her original passion for environmental law, establishing a non-profit to provide legal representation to communities affected by corporate pollution. But the Martinez family remained a painful silence in Sophia's life. Pride on both sides had created a chasm that seemed impossible to bridge. They'll come around, Daniel assured her. Now that they know I'm not just some bum. That's exactly the problem, Sophia sighed. If they only accept you because of money, they've missed the entire point. The opportunity for reconciliation came from an unexpected source. Sophia's youngest brother, Leo, always the family rebel, reached out via email. This whole thing is insane, he wrote. But I miss my sister. Can we talk? Their meeting at a neutral coffee shop was awkward but honest. Leo admitted the family was in turmoil not just from the revelation of Daniel's wealth, but from being forced to confront their own values. Mom keeps saying she always saw something special in him, Leo rolled his eyes. Dad's pretending he never said anything harsh, just that he was concerned for your welfare. Sophia laughed despite herself. And what do you think? Leo considered the question seriously. I think you saw something in him that was real, whether he had billions or nothing. And that makes me wonder what I've been missing by judging people the way our parents taught us. That conversation became the first tentative step toward healing. Leo agreed to meet Daniel, approaching him not as a billionaire but as the man who had made his sister happier than he'd ever seen her. The dinner went surprisingly well. Without the pressure of family expectations, Leo saw the same qualities in Daniel that had drawn Sophia to him: his intelligence, humility, and genuine interest in others. You know, Leo said as the evening ended, you should come to Sunday brunch. Create a complete scandal. The invitation, though delivered jokingly, opened a door. After much discussion, Sophia and Daniel decided to accept, but on their own terms. They would not pretend the past hadn't happened or that wounds didn't still need healing. The Martinez mansion looked exactly as Sophia remembered, yet somehow smaller. Her mother opened the door herself, a departure from usual protocol that signaled both uncertainty and effort. Sophia, she breathed, embracing her daughter stiffly before turning to Daniel with a practiced smile. And Mr. Chen. How lovely to finally meet you properly. The brunch was a masterclass in awkward conversation. Sophia's father alternated between overly familiar financial questions to Daniel and stilted apologies to his daughter. Her mother fluttered about, dropping mentions of friends who always thought you two made a wonderful couple, friends who had demonstrably cut Sophia off months earlier. Only Leo's authentic presence kept Sophia from walking out. He caught her eye across the table, making subtle faces at particularly transparent attempts to rewrite history. The breaking point came when Sophia's father raised his glass in a toast. To new beginnings, he said smoothly. And to welcoming Daniel into our family circle. Before Sophia could respond, Daniel set his glass down untouched. With respect, sir, I'm not sure I've been welcomed yet, he said calmly. You've welcomed my net worth and what it represents. But the man who sat on that street corner, the one your daughter loved when he had nothing, he hasn't been acknowledged at all. A heavy silence fell over the table. What exactly are you implying? Sophia's father asked, his voice tight. I'm not implying anything, Daniel replied. I'm stating that Sophia deserves better than a family who only accepts her choices when they come with dollar signs attached. Sophia's mother gasped. Her brothers looked uncomfortable. But something shifted in her father's expression, a flicker of recognition, perhaps even respect. You're right, he said finally, surprising everyone. We handled this badly. Catastrophically, Leo amended. Martinez shot him a look before continuing. I built everything we have from nothing. Somewhere along the way, I started measuring worth by wealth. When Sophia chose someone I thought had none, I couldn't understand. So now that he's rich, problem solved. Sophia challenged. Her father had the grace to look ashamed. No. The problem was never his circumstances. It was my inability to trust your judgment. To see what you saw. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was a start. The conversation that followed was raw but necessary, addressing the control, the conditional love, the expectations that had defined the family dynamic. I can't promise to change overnight, Mr. Martinez admitted. But I'd like the chance to try. As they left that day, Sophia felt lighter. Not healed, but no longer bleeding. That went better than expected, Daniel observed as they drove away. The bar was extremely low, Sophia laughed. But yes, it's a beginning. In the months that followed, they built a life that honored both where they had been and what they had learned. They established the Second Chance Housing Initiative, providing not just shelter but career rehabilitation for people experiencing homelessness. They funded scholarships for students from disadvantaged backgrounds, with emphasis on those who demonstrated character and resilience. The Martinez family, true to their word, began the slow work of rebuilding trust. There were missteps and old habits that died hard, but genuine effort gradually replaced performance. 1 year after the inheritance revelation, Daniel proposed not with an ostentatious display of wealth, but by returning to the park bench where they had shared meals in harder times. This is where I fell in love with you, he said, holding out a simple but elegant ring. Not in spite of our circumstances, but because of how we faced them together. Their wedding was a reflection of their journey, neither the flashy society event the Martinezes might once have demanded nor a rejection of celebration. It was thoughtful, meaningful, and authentic. During the reception, Sophia found a moment alone with her father, who had given a surprisingly heartfelt toast acknowledging his past mistakes. Are you happy? He asked, a question he had never thought to pose before. Yes, she answered simply. Not because of what we have, but because of who we've become. As they prepared to leave for their honeymoon, a working trip combining vacation with visits to potential locations for new housing initiatives, Daniel pulled Sophia aside. I have something to tell you, he said, his expression serious. Not another secret inheritance, she teased. No, he laughed. Just a realization. Everyone thinks your life changed when you discovered I wasn't really poor. But the truth is, I was never wealthier than when I had nothing but your belief in me. Sophia smiled, understanding completely. And I was never freer than when I chose love over everything I was supposed to want. As they drove away from the reception, Sophia looked back at their gathered loved ones, her family, gradually healing, friends who had stood by them through everything, and people they had helped along the way, now part of their extended circle. The journey had been unexpected, the lessons hard-won. But the truth they had discovered was priceless, that true wealth isn't measured in bank accounts but in the courage to live authentically, and that sometimes, losing everything you thought you wanted is the only way to find what you truly need. They say life's greatest lessons come disguised as its hardest challenges. For Sophia and Daniel, A journey that began with morning coffee and a cardboard sign transformed not just their lives but their understanding of what truly matters. 5 years after their wedding, the Chen Foundation had become one of the most innovative forces in addressing systemic poverty. Their approach, combining housing, education, healthcare, and dignity, was being studied and replicated in cities across the country. The Martinez family had evolved as well. Sophia's father, humbled by his mistakes, became an unlikely advocate for looking beyond appearances. Her mother, though still fond of social occasions, now directed her energy toward meaningful philanthropy rather than status seeking. Leo had joined the foundation, bringing his business acumen and irreverent perspective to their work. On the anniversary of their first coffee together, Sophia and Daniel made a tradition of returning to that street corner, not just to remember where they began, but to connect with the people still struggling there. The most dangerous thing about privilege, Daniel often said in his speaking engagements, isn't having it. It's forgetting that it exists. Their story became something of an urban legend, embellished in some tellings, simplified in others. But those who knew them understood that the true miracle wasn't a homeless man turning out to be wealthy. It was two people brave enough to choose authenticity in a world obsessed with appearances. In their home, comfortable but purposefully modest, they kept a framed photo of their early days together, Sophia in her designer suit, Daniel in his worn jacket, sharing a bench and a meal. Alongside it stood a quote they had chosen together: "The best things in life aren't things." Perhaps the most profound change was in how they measured success. Not by acquisitions or accolades, but by lives touched, barriers broken, and moments of genuine connection. "What would you do differently?" a journalist once asked Sophia, referring to the year her family had disowned her. "If you could go back knowing everything you know now?" She considered the question carefully before answering. "Nothing. Because then, I might miss the most important lesson, that sometimes losing your way is the only path to finding your truth." As their story continues to unfold, one thing remains constant: the understanding that true wealth has never been about what you possess, but about what possesses your heart.